Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Human Challenge, where we explore all the human challenges in today's world, the challenges of being human, and how we can challenge ourselves to be more human for the greater good. I'm your host, Vanessa Furlano, based in Sault Ste Marie today, chatting with J.L. Fizzell, author of Human Nature, right here, who is currently also based in Sault Ste Marie, but originally comes from Timmins, which is I thought I was pretty north in Ontario, but Timmins is like more north than me, so we're getting very north. But welcome, welcome to the show.
I always laugh when people joke about Timmins. We get growing up, there was 2 months of summer, and that was it. It was 10 months of snow, 2 months, so it is pretty north.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is
thanks for
very
having
much
me
the.
today.
No, thank you. It's very much the sentiment in Sault Ste. Marie as well, I have to say. But I'm very excited. I'm very excited to have you here, and I really liked your book a lot. I came across it because both of our books are for sale at the Sault Ste. Marie Museum, and they're actually like near each other on the shelves. And so I went in, I was doing an interview, and then I saw your book. I was like, oh my gosh, this theme of being human. My book is human, yours is human nature, and I know that we both talk about being human. And so obviously I had to pick up the book, and then now I have to have you here because we need to talk about being human. So I loved it a lot. A lot of what I talk about with being human is a lot more of that, maybe a little bit more of like this combination between like spirituality, but spirituality, mindfulness, maybe, and how we can like this idea of individual healing leading to collective healing. And I think that's a very important thing for me. And so what I loved a lot about your book was this connection to nature, right? Because I think that's a huge reality and huge part of what it means to be human. There's a lot of I think we're kind of conditioned in society to believe, and especially because I know you have a psychology background, we're conditioned to believe that like we're the center of the world and we're the center of the universe. But when we start looking at us and our human connection, not just within, but the human connection around us, including nature, there's the world is suddenly very different, right? It's suddenly we're not looking at the world inside out, we're looking at the world outside in. And so that was one of the things I really gathered from your book, especially because it's poetry. And so, poetry is always really beautiful to read because of that, right? You can make some of these inferences connected to you and still hear there's a story. So super excited that you are here. Maybe just before, if you maybe want to tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll get into a little bit more about the book and some of these things I just shared.
Yeah, for sure. So, like you said, my background is psychology. Before I wrote that book, I was working for the school board as a mental health and behavior support. And one year got bad, and I turned to writing because I used a lot of creativity in my own work and decided to take that and publish it and share it with the world just so people didn't know that they were so alone in their experiences. I had that dream, I think, like a lot of artists have. If I can just reach one person and change their life, then I've done my job. And then from there, that first book, I've gone on to publish four more, all kind of on the idea of nature and that connection to the greater whole, while still going inward and being like not afraid to explore myself and see what I find, and holding myself to the same standards and the same things that I was teaching the kids I was working with, and making sure that I was really practicing what I preached and not just kind of saying it and not living it.
Right. I really appreciate that a lot, in that perspective of holding myself accountable to what I've been, because I think it's very, whether it's teachers, parents, even ourselves as friends, right? It's so easy to offer so much wisdom, but then not not take it for ourselves.
Yeah,
And so I really appreciate that perspective. So okay, so then Human Nature was your first book or your fourth book?
it was my fourth, actually.
Oh, it was your
Yeah.
fourth. Okay, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. And then I was like, oh, maybe I should double check that. Okay, so Human Nature was your fourth book, and you wrote it after your work with at the school board.
Yeah.
And so, what was so you mentioned, there was I think you just kind of hit a point in your life you had to start. It sounded like you just start taking inventory and just kind of needed to do some internal sorting. And so I'm just kind of curious, like, obviously writing was important, but then this role of nature, right? Like this book is about human, but it's about human nature, but it's as much like everything in the book is really about nature and that connection to nature. And so,
Yeah.
what was the role of nature in all of this as well?
So with the first three books, I was living in Timmins at the time, and Timmins is a wonderful place if you love nature. Otherwise, if you're into the big city vibe, it's really not for you. So I spent a lot of time out in nature, and like I said, I was going through a lot, and just being out there, whether it was blueberry picking with my dad or sitting in a boat or hiking the trails, I always felt like I was going inward, and something about nature felt really grounding, but like forced the humility out of me. Um, so that's kind of where human nature took. I had stopped and I sat back after my 3 books. My first 3 books were actually kind of, I don't know, for a writer, I struggle with words sometimes too. It was kind of almost a trauma dump, if that makes any sense. My goal when I wrote those first 3 was to take my experiences and just put them into paper. I wasn't allowed to take anything out. Whatever I had to say had to be said. I wasn't allowed to take poems out. The only rule I set for myself was that I could edit the words to make it sound better, but not the theme. And I was never allowed to delete ideas. Um,
Mm.
so after writing that, I stepped back and I had to rethink about where I wanted to go with my writing and what I wanted to do. And being someone from Northern Ontario, Timmins to Sault Ste Marie, my love for nature, it kind of made sense to continue exploring nature while still exploring myself and just taking that theme to kind of a deeper level.
And so, I definitely resonate a lot with this idea of, the kind of trauma dumping, and then this like not taking anything out, and I love that so much because I think it's a way to really honor your experiences, our experiences,
Yeah.
right? And it's just when we start trying to like edit out our trauma, we're kind of editing our lives, and I think that, but instead being able to just sort of accept and honor, like this was a part of my life, and it was hard, but it's an invitation for that compassion to come in. And so I
Yeah.
absolutely completely resonate with that message. Love how nature also played a role in your in just in your role in your life as well, and especially growing up in Northern Ontario. I remember you also mentioned to me that your husband was also Indigenous, correct? Or is
Yeah.
is
Yeah. He's
Indigenous?
Indigenous. He's Anishinaabe.
And so, and I think that, how did that also have a bit of an impact in terms of your relationship with nature?
Yeah. So my mom, so I'm second generation Canadian. My mom is from Germany. So her idea of nature is hiking a mountain to go eat at a restaurant at the top of it. It is not not Northern Ontario. And my dad's from Wawa originally. So Algoma District, Northern Ontario. And his version of nature, where it was going in the middle of nowhere and, climbing the mountain, but it's because there was no one around and he was going to go fish or hunt. And I think I had to really explore like my own views and kind of come to my own terms with, because like I felt like Northern Ontario never really fit the way it was supposed to, but I think it's because I didn't let myself fit the way I needed to. So I had my own views about nature and like spent some time thinking about where they came from. And then I had a chance, many chances to talk with my husband and his family about, traditional Anishinaabe teachings, the connections with nature, the way they view it, that it's about servitude. And I really loved how a lot of those views lined up with how I felt about nature, but at the same time challenged some of my ideas about what nature was, and learning about the ideas of spirit and how. So, my son, when we got his spirit name, and thinking about the idea of spirit names and nature's spirit and how all those things play together, started to challenge my own views about spirit. And like, well, we think about religion and spirituality and that humans have spirit, but is it just us? Like, there are plenty of teachings across the world that would argue differently. And so I started spending more time thinking about that and thinking about more than just the way I saw the world, and kind of starting to view myself from like you said, outside in, and thinking about myself like, hey, well, how am I like a tree? How am I like this? How can we humanize nature, but also do the reverse? Take the human out of us and relate to ourselves as nature.
Right. Yes. I absolutely love that. I love that so much. And I kind of want to just like pause in those words for a second, because I just love this reciprocal relationship between, humans, between nature, between spirit. And so I really appreciate that perspective. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to dive a little bit deeper now into the book, because the book's kind of broken out into the 4 seasons, and obviously there are some common themes that tend to draw out through the 4 seasons. And so I hoped you could maybe share a bit more about that, that intentionality behind that, and maybe sharing some of these themes as well.
Yeah, for sure. So the biggest theme that I wanted to highlight in this book when I wrote it was growth, and that the idea that it's still happening even when you don't see it, even when you don't feel it, even when it's minus 40 outside and you're like, there's no way there is life outside surviving right now, that sometimes we need to step back and rest, or sometimes it's the season to give it all you've got, or, you never really know what's going to come, but that it's always going to be moving, it's always changing. And just because these are the seasons this year, they look a certain way, you can always expect certain things out of winter, but it's also going to evolve and change, and maybe next year it won't look the same. Um, so I really love the idea of growth and consistency in the way that they challenge each other. It's almost like an oxymoron, like they fit, but they don't fit. And I love that. It really challenges your brain and makes you think. Um, I also really wanted to explore the idea of self-discovery and being able to be brave enough to go through myself and be honest. And like you said, honor those experiences and make sure that I was holding myself to that. Because as somebody who was, I stepped back once I had my son from my role in education in that behavior and mental health support role, to focus on my family and writing. But during those times, I had 3 schools of anywhere up to 200 upwards kids like looking up to me as a role model, and my son. And I really had to make sure that I was being what I needed as a kid, and making sure that I was staying true to my younger self while still being brave enough to grow and change and evolve. Um, yeah, so those are some of the big themes that kind of stuck out for me when I was writing it, that I really, really wanted to push through.
And I think that like you're saying, it's growth, but it's evolution, right? And sometimes
Yeah,
it's for myself personally, it's a term I started to gravitate towards is like evolution, because there's really never going to be an end game for anything. It's just we're like
yeah,
consistently always becoming, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, and so I
Becoming, but your core is still the same regardless. Like, there's always like common themes between. Yeah, I like that.
Exactly, exactly. And I did catch that as well reading your book, and some of these themes, how they I think in particular the part where you mentioned that you're always going through these experiences just like regardless of kind of what's happening around us. And so and I noticed that a lot in the book, like there were certain poems that related to a specific theme, and it was like they were always revisited in each section, right? And you could see
Yeah,
how nature coincided with that. It was like you're still going through this is still the experience, but now the context is different. Now the leaves are different colors. Now
yeah,
there's snow on the ground. Now it's summer, right? And so I think it was really interesting to see how those concepts, those themes evolved, developed, changed just over time. And in this case, time is like the seasons, not this concrete definition of time, right? In terms
yeah,
of our schedules. It's like again that evolution, and really that co-evolution with nature.
yeah. And that's been a big thing my entire life. You cannot call Northern Ontario home and not be okay with just giving yourself to the mercy of the seasons. And I think it's kind of a cool resilience building thing that we have up here for us, that maybe some other people who don't, experience nature the same way we do have. And yeah, so that resonated for me for sure.
I love that. Resilience. That's exactly what it is. Minus 30 winters, it's resilience, 100%.
Yep.
The other thing I wanted to ask you specifically about the book, is there a favorite piece that you like to talk about or refer back to, or one that just kind of always calls you regardless of the season that we're in?
Yeah. No, there's a million. I honestly I could do a whole bunch, but there's one called An Artist's Soul that I really, really love, and it's one of my favorites. And it kind of deals with the idea of staying true to yourself no matter what, regardless of whatever's happening, and to make the best of things regardless of what's going on for you.
Right. Did you want to read it to us?
Yeah, for sure. So one great thing about being an author is that I have my books all over the house at any given point. Here we go. Okay, so this one's, an artist's soul. A soul dancing a ballet of chaos, thrashing about in the storms, created beauty in her whirlwind simply by bowing at the end. So whatever you do, be sure to bow. Not to lower your head, but as the most graceful way a soul can say, "You're welcome."
I love it. I love it so much. And it's just, I feel it. I feel, reading it and like hearing it, I feel this warmth, just like hearing it because, I don't know, it's like very empowering. Oh my gosh. And I think also this idea of just finding beauty in the chaos, in the mess, because it is, and it makes me think of, the cosmos, right? Like it is like this, scientifically it's like entropy, right? Which is chaos, but then it is like beautiful, we get these beautiful stars, we have these beautiful planets, and so I just, I really love this piece a lot. I think it's really beautiful. And grace. I'm all about grace. I think that's like that might just be me and my personal journey right now, but I'm all about like exactly like living in this most graceful way. And I think even gratitude, just being grateful for the experience that we have as humans.
That one, I've always kind of resonated with that one just because life often is, like you said, chaotic and it can get messy and hard. And if you can't step back from it and find that silver lining, find the good, find the change, find the growth, then you can get lost in it. And it can be really, really hard to pull yourself out of.
Absolutely. And I think too, like even just, when we talk about like stepping outside of ourselves, even from a mindfulness perspective, right? Being able to just observe, there's this, can we even just step back and just observe the chaos for being chaos and be okay with that? You know what I mean? Like being able to like, we're kind of separate ourselves, like it's chaotic and I'm just going to accept and honor this chaos for simply being chaos. And that's it, and I think, like, I just think that's another perspective. And I just offer that because, like how can we like separate ourselves? How can we like honor that experience? And kind of going back to what you were saying earlier about, we were talking about trauma and being able to honor the trauma. It's kind of the same idea, right? Can I step outside of this chaos and just like honor this chaos for what it is?
And then that kind of makes me think of the last line, the most graceful way a soul can say you're welcome. Just making space for yourself. I'm here. I did it. You've obviously seen my story, so you're welcome for whatever that offered you, the good, the bad, the ugly, and just kind of honoring yourself and just never to be ashamed of it, to own every piece of your story because it's yours. And you can't love anyone, you can't show grace, you can't be any of those good things if you can't do it for yourself.
Honestly, beautiful words. And I can't imagine a better way to end this episode. I really hope that people will take the time to let those words sink in, to let them resonate. At the end of the day, I think what you're really talking about is like acceptance, right? That acceptance that this is my life, this is the journey, and I'm going to honor and respect it for what it is. And I absolutely love that. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Really grateful. Everyone, please check out Human Nature. Where can we find it?
So if you're local in Sault Ste. Marie right now, you can pick Human Nature up at the Main Street Cafe and Sault Ste. Marie Museum, right next to your book. And if you're more of an online person, you can find it Amazon, Kindle, Kindle Unlimited, and I'm pretty sure Barnes and Noble's carrying it too.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Super grateful for your time.
Thanks.
And I do hope that people will pick it up and, find the space to reconnect both within and with nature.